Thank you. Thank you so much. Awesome. Let me get my slides here. And that's Chris over there. He's from Wildfire, and they're sponsoring this room, so don't forget to, any needs you have for entertainment, definitely go over there. So, Ryon Brewer, I'm with Vir Technology. I founded and this current CEO of Vir Technology. I'll give you a really quick background. I've been in the technology world for probably the last 20 years. Started a couple different businesses. My last business that I sold in 2018, we were partners with Oracle, and we implemented their sales, marketing, and service software. And one of the things that we learned as a partner and as we worked for all these different companies is the importance of processes. Whether you're a one-person company or a billion-dollar company, the processes that you have inside of your company are extremely important. So today, as I've started this company, about 6-8 months ago, as AI was coming back into it, and everyone's just super excited about AI, I've met a lot of companies who said, hey, we've tried out AI, we don't know what it's useful for, we just know that it's a big term, and they don't know where to go with it. So 73% of small businesses have tried AI, and usually trying it means they have ChatGPT and asking it answers and help me do marketing and help me do this and that, and then they've got all their employees doing it, and then no one's doing anything the same, and it just becomes a big mess. 61% of those business owners are not even training their team on the AI that they're choosing, right? So you can just imagine, I think everyone here has used AI some way, shape, or form, right? Whether it's asking it a question or being a little bit more in depth. And you can imagine if you are a company and every one of your employees is doing it differently, that it's just going to become a mess. And pretty quickly, those companies abandon it and think that's not for us. But one of the important numbers that you'll find is this right here. 6 to 12 hours wasted per employee per week on processes that AI can handle. That right there is an extreme amount of money that can be saved for a company. Not replacing people, but making people more effective and making them to the point that they can be creating more of that bottom line. So, we came up with this roadmap, and at the end of this whole presentation, you're going to be able to give me an email, and I'm going to send you this guide that can help you through this. Through my experience in working with all these different companies, we worked with $20 million companies up to billion-dollar companies, is we'd first sit down with them, and we'd say, we want to understand your current state. What is your current state process at? And then we'd ask them, where do you want your future state to be? This is not AI driven. This was their business driven. What's happening with your sales, your marketing? So same thing today. You want to implement AI? Well, the first place that you got to start is you need to just map every workflow. And that's the beginning of where AI can be involved. And then we tell them to start small. Choose one tool, one problem, one process, one goal. Then we want you to pilot it 90 days. And then we want to train everybody, and then we're going to scale, and then we're going to go back through that. So what I've done is we've got 3 different case studies of our clients that we're going to go through, and none of it's sexy. It's boring. And that's when you know when AI is going to be working is it's not sexy. I don't have a really cool demo to show you all the cool things that AI can do. But what I can show you is businesses that are implementing and are saving money and creating bottom line revenue by implementing AI. So, local HVAC company, 8 employees. You've got a business owner, and he's got 2 office employees, and then the rest of them are out in the field working. He spends 6 hours a week writing follow-up emails and building quotes manually. He's the only one that trusts the process, is himself. He doesn't trust anybody else to help with those. Now, leads are going cold because the follow-ups take 2 to 3 days. In their business specifically, you can imagine someone calling up HVAC and saying, hey, give me a quote. Within 5 minutes, they're calling the next company until they get what they're looking for. And if you're waiting 2 to 3 days, then you're going to have people that have already selected their HVAC contractor, and he's already out of the process. They tried a bunch of different AI tools. None of them took because they didn't even know what they were asking. They were like, we need to use AI. And so they thought ChatGPT would be what they needed. And so they just started putting random information in there, and it never helped them build anything that they were trying to do. So we identified that the owner was spending all this time doing this. So we needed to figure out how we could automate his process. And that was it. So what we did is we created a mailbox for them that anytime any type of email came into them individually, they would forward it to this mailbox. And then there's an agent that's sitting in there. And an agent is an agent that we built that looks at that email box and says, okay, so who's this person? What's their industry? And it starts communicating back and forth with them through email. It says, hey, we're glad we got your information here. I need a little bit more. And it would respond back and it says, okay, great. We see this information. We'll go back and forth. So this is what the owner was taking all this time, was to respond back and forth to all these emails. Now, during this process, it was gathering everything. They had years and years of quotes that we were able to feed into their LLM. How many know what an LLM is? That's your model, right? ChatGPT, it's got an LLM behind it that's running it. So we trained it on all these different quotes, different industries, different people, residential, commercial, everything you could imagine. We trained it on that. So now, instead of an individual doing it, this agent was now building the quote for them. Now, the owner didn't trust it at first. He's like, I don't trust them to actually send it out, but he wanted every quote to come back to them. We had it formatted perfectly for him. Then he would go through it and say, yeah, this is good. You know, I don't have to do any changes. And he's now at the point, like, we're ready to actually flip the switch to allow it to 100% send those quotes out for them, formatted and everything from there. And then the other thing we built for these guys is now to allow these other people who are on the phone, who would before would just have to get the information and send it over to the boss. We now have an interface for them, looks like ChatGPT. So when they're on the phone, they can just be asking it questions, and it's asking this question. We need this information. And now right on the phone, it can build their quote, get their email, and then send it out for them. And AI is that piece that's behind it, but really it was just all about that process of what they can automate. So where did I put my clicker? So what did this do for them? So just for the owner, 6 hours saved per week for the owner alone, 23% rise in closed estimates, doing nothing different other than responding that same day. That right there is an increase of revenue without changing anything of your employees or of your workers or anything else. And now they have same-day follow-ups, now sent within hours, not days. They've got their two office workers are able to take phone calls and estimate right there. He was really adamant about not buying software as far as like the estimating software, because he said, we've done it before and it didn't save me any time, just cost me a lot of money. So now they don't have to have any software addition, and they're able to go through that process. So company number one, they identified a problem, we identified where the waste was, and we were able to automate it, and then we added the AI in there into that process. So the next one, this is an accounting firm out of Portugal. They got 50 plus employees. They are in Europe and they're in US. We're actually kind of on a phase 2. We've successfully went through their first iteration of tool, and they loved it so much, they're like, well, what's next? What's our next process? So I'm going to talk quickly about these. And I do want to have Q&A. So I am going fast, but at the end I want to have Q&A because I think that's really important. So the first problem is they've got these partners with all this information and process, and you've got all these junior associates throughout the country. They've got all these remote satellite offices. It has a couple of junior associates and a senior accountant, and they're always hiring junior associates. It took them months to learn what the firm, how they do things. And so it was constantly asking the partners or the senior members saying, hey, so what's that process? How do we do this? You know, we've got this commercial person coming in here. What do we do? It's not that they weren't capable. They just needed to know how to do that process. So all that knowledge was trapped in the senior partners' heads. You can imagine if it takes you 2 to 3 months, that's just a lot of time that you're paying for them not to be putting anything into your bottom line. So we built for them a knowledge system. We implemented a locally trained, so we took an LLM, open source. That was no open source. It was freely available and freely to use however you want. They were very, very concerned about their knowledge, right? We don't want that out there. So it's actually hosted at their location. And then it has a cloud component where they're able to have all their employees can go to that cloud component that connects into that local connection. So now It's their own chat GPT. They call it Gary. Gary's his name. He's their accountant. And so they can go now to Gary and ask it questions. And hey, I've got a new client. They're a commercial residential, and what type of forms do I need to have? Asks it, comes back. And it's saving over 90% of the time that they were asking questions to these other individuals are now saved from them saving or wasting their time. So that was awesome. We went through that. They love it. They're like, this is great. Not only do the juniors use it, the seniors use it, right? Everyone's using this just to make sure that they're on the same process. And those that know for LLMs, you can train it with your own data, right? And so that's what they did is we took all this data. And that led us to the next process that we wanted to tackle was their onboarding workflow. And this really saved them a lot of money. So they had, in their process, they have this big process of we're onboarding a client, and we have to go back and forth. We have a couple meetings. We got a couple juniors on there, and it's about 4 hours of time just to gather the data that they need to put a dossier together to give it to a senior accountant who can then go work on that. So that's a lot of wasted time just to gather information. We found that they've been recording all of their onboarding meetings for the last 10 to 15 years, whether it was on Zoom or whether it was just an audio. So we have all this great data from every type of industry that you can imagine that they've recorded across the world, specifically US and Europe. So we took all this data and analyzed it and now figured out what does it mean, what do they need to pull out of a customer. So now a customer comes in, they decide to onboard them. They give them a website that they can log into, and now it just starts going through and says, hey, we need these tax forms. Gives them the tax form and says, great, we now need these things. We need these things. You're in the U.S. Manufacturing regulations. We're going to need this information. So based off of all their information that they've trained it on, it was now able to pull everything from them, create the dossier. Now the senior accountant can go in and grab the dossier and say, now I'm ready to sit down with them. So we eliminated out of this process 4 hours of these juniors working on that, and that was their bottleneck. In this day and age, they couldn't hire enough people that could work for them, right? It was a big challenge to get enough people. So have the people that you have, make them more efficient. So their savings for them alone, and they're a 50-plus employee, so you'd probably say they're probably around a $20 million company. The savings that they had, and these are real savings, they're already recognizing it, is $1 million to $1.3 million in savings per year. So that's a big deal just in automating that process. It's not sexy at all, right? It works. All that comes out is they get this dossier, and now the senior accountant's still doing it, and now it just means the juniors can be doing more. So $1 million in savings, so that's what percent is that of 20 million? 1 million? 5? Yes. 5% increase in revenue in doing nothing and implementing these processes and AI in that. So that's our medium one, if you will. And our 4 hours saved per client, 2+ hours saved per junior associate, saved per partner per week from going and visiting these guys. And they have 24 access to their firm's knowledge and their data. So the last one I want to talk about, let me make sure where we got on time. We got about 15 minutes. Are you guys able to hear me? Okay.
They're recording it, Bill.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll keep talking. So a professional services firm, 250 plus employees. They implement software. Those at ERP, NetSuite, JDE, EBS. They implement these big high-end, and specifically in the manufacturing world. They've got this problem of training, so in that world, they'll bring on consultants, for 6 months to a year, right? They'll be on a project for a good amount of time, and then they're gone. So they've always got this constant turn as they're training these new employees. And this was a big deal for them. There was a lot of money spent on their education, on their training, on their software to try to get them to be educated as quickly as possible. Any of you that have been trained in big companies, right? You've got 2 weeks that you got to go through all this training. 90% of it's not relevant, but you got to go through it. And that's how they all felt, right? And management really doesn't care if you don't do it because you're like, I need you to start working, right? It's more important to have you billable than to have you sitting here doing this. So it was a really big separate of what the needs of the individuals and the company and management. So they were spending $30,000 a year just on generic courses with no way to measure if they closed any gaps. So what we did is we came in and identified this process of training and where they were lacking. You can imagine if you're a project manager, they'd have this big, huge training module of project management. And if they're a great project manager, didn't recognize that, they'd spend most of their time learning about stuff they already knew. So what we did is we created a skills assessment. And it goes through and it's just a big thing. They go through and they just have to answer all these questions. It takes about an hour. And then AI then goes in and builds their new training program. And now it eliminated their onboarding was down from 5 weeks, and now within 12 days they were fully onboarded. A big piece of this was this one right here. 22% of people would actually complete it, right? They get involved in their project, and once you're fully involved, you don't have time to do this. 73% of them were now actively or completing their program. And the other thing it did is it started identifying their gaps, right? It could be anything from like harassment. You know, that's part of, HR, right? They have a sexual harassment and harassment area, and they have all these different questions and scenarios. And now it's identifying, here is an area that they need some more training on. And so as it's going through, it's building the next module and the next module for them to make sure that they're fully trained in that. So the average improvement in skills gap scores in 90 days was 41%. So you can imagine that all these different employees have gaps, whether it's management, leadership, knowledge, technical. They're now 41% improvement in that. So it was able to create their own learning path and constantly changing. Every module that they did, it would change it and create the next one. And then it has real-time progress tracking. And then in the future, as new training comes out, it can identify the users that need to have that training, those that don't. So now you don't get all 250 employees getting a training that only 10% need. You get that 10% has that new training. So huge cost savings for them. The biggest thing that they loved is that they felt that they had employees that were trained, with their policies, with their procedures, and that they could trust that this is a project manager that's out there. We trust that he's a project manager that we can lead. So that is our three. What actually works, start with the problem, not the tool. Tools can be, you don't even know that they're working. Like in that first one or even in multiple of these, we build these agents, right? They don't even know what that even means. We just tell them we're going to build an agent, and he's going to go in there and check your email, and he's going to build an estimate for you. It doesn't even have to have a name. They name theirs Gary. And then we always tell them we need to pilot with measurement, not enthusiasm, right? After 90 days, did it change something? Do you see employees that are more effective? Do you see revenue changing? That way it's not a hobby, right? It's not people just using ChatGPT. Then you train the whole team. We think that's important. Addressing the fears. A lot of time, I was talking with Chris. A lot of time people think AI is going to take their job, right? We're going to be bringing AI into here. And in every one of those cases, did you see any jobs being eliminated? No. We were now making people more effective, which ultimately, because people are people, right? AI is not at that point that it can replace people, right? But we can make them more effective. We can make them earn more money. And then the last is AI is a first draft accelerator. It's not a magic wand. AI can handle 70%. Your team refines the rest in a fraction of the time. And that's really where, I want you guys to kind of start thinking. Okay, there we go. So, grab a business card from me. We have the Small Business AI Implementation Roadmap, and it's a great starter for you guys just to start thinking of ways that AI could be involved in your business that actually can make changes. It's 10 pages. It basically goes through this right here and helps you identify areas that you could be involved. So that gives us about 10 minutes, and I'd love to answer any questions Comments, discussion? It's now up to you guys to lead it.
Has there been any industries or any businesses you come across where the AI just wouldn't work?
No. And really, the idea, like, HVAC, people would think HVAC, right? A construction industry. We're working with a construction company right here that's just handling every bit of their, how many of their framers they've got, how many of these. And so they've got about a 25% increase of work that they can do now that they just are letting AI manage their scheduling and just saying, wow, we just were able to increase 25%. Another really weird one that is really cool is a company in New York. They collect used cooking oil. It's pretty, you have to dispose of it correctly, right? So if you imagine all the restaurants in New York, and all we did is we allowed AI to come in for their delivery guys, because some restaurants are like, we need to be picked up on Monday and Thursday, right? We need to be this and this and this and this and whatever it is. AI has come in and it now schedules every one of their, on a daily basis, of all the different things that change. People call up everything, and it schedules their drivers in the most effective route. Not complex, right? We're not talking this is revolutionary and that this is brand new, but this is something that an oil collection can actually use. So yeah, I haven't seen anything, because like I said, every business has processes and we can automate processes. Any other questions? Yeah.
So what's your process like for, obviously you audit, you figure it out, but what's your process to find the right tool for the job? There's so many different AIs and most people go to ChatGPT, but.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the first thing I think for us is when I talked earlier about the current state, future state, right? We sit down with them, and it may be a month, and we just are laying out all of their processes, right? We're just saying, what are your processes? I don't even care that we'll never automate the janitor right here, but we want to know how he's involved. And so we go through and we put these big visual diagrams, and then we talk about future state, of where they want to get to that future state. And then usually the next thing is saying, what's your biggest pain point? Right? What's taking up your most of the time? And that's, as soon as we're able to circle that, that's where our expertise comes in. And there are so many different ways. You heard me talk about LangChain, right? LangGraph. Those are, instead of using, everyone is hearing about agents right now, whether Claude or Gemini is building these agents, right? And you can now have them program it and they can go do all these things for you. Those two, LangChain and LangGraph, that's what we use to actually build the individual agent. And we just have that expertise and it's daily. We were talking just a few minutes ago before it started. I finally have my own personal AI that I actually trust as much as, Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT. It's running at my computer at home, and it's connected to my phone, and we're now at that point. So yeah, it's always changing, but we do have those experts. Yeah. Nope. Right. So yeah, we're not a fan. So you got some of you may know N8N and Claw, all these different things going in. We're not a fan of those because we want to get in. We love guardrails, right? Yep. Yes. So ours, yeah, and Chris and I had talked just a little bit. So for instance, the accounting firm, their whole process, everything we've built for them is sitting at their headquarters, and it's not hitting anything on the cloud. It's all protected there, encrypted. So yeah, we're building very specific pieces and not using any of those other tools. So yeah, and you talk about Claw. That is, if you go research LangChain, that is like if you want to take what they're doing and build your own.
Well, no, so it's all about Ryan's, they use it as car referencing,
Mm-hmm.
body, but then you have different brains, like Code is a brain for coding, not Gemini
Yeah.
or Quinn or any of that. There's just knowing what brain to plug in to do what, but you can work in multiple projects and like an average person in the business
Right.
so much data, so like it just moves so fast, it's knowing what engine to put.
Absolutely, yeah. So, we've had, and we have a lot of claw experts. And the only thing, there's a lot of things that claw that scares, there's a lot of things that are scary about it, right? There's constantly holes, there's constantly things being plugged in. And the thing that we want to do with our bots is our agents is they're very, very specific into what they're doing. Yep.
MD files and different frameworks and shit built in.
Yep. But we still use like Quen. Yep, we plug all those into. Yep. Yeah. So for instance, the one that the accounting firm, there's LLMs that are very specific to accounting that are very small, and that's a great way. And then we're more worried about training. That's probably the biggest thing that makes them successful is the training. So we train the models. What's that? Well, not that training, the training of the LLM. So we'll take that base LLM and then we'll take all their data and we're not just going to RAG it. We actually train their model. So yeah, that's a big thing is when you train your model, you're basically taking that proprietary information and baking it right into, not ChatGPT, but into their LLM. No.
Build their files and keep dropping them in, but keep doing that, you're literally just in everything else.
Yep.
So you're helping them to keep it.
Yeah, and for those that, so there's two ways that you can add documents, and that's called RAG. And that's basically you're adding it into, so now when you talk to ChatGPT or any model, it goes and references them, but it's not part of the model. When you actually build or train the model, it connects every single thing like, ChatGPT knows, when you ask about the Pledge of Allegiance, it's already built every little connector possible between every other little point. And that's what training a model does, is you put it into there and you now train it against every other accounting, in our sense, about that. So now when you talk to it, it's not referencing data, it's just part of the model. And that's in a big piece. Yeah.
So, a lot of companies are starting to roll out their own AI, like our HRIS has an AI, or Microsoft has got their AI. And so I guess my question is, and your company, it seems like it goes in and just codes it for them. Is that kind of, am I understanding that correctly? Instead of using these other systems. So I guess my question is before a company gets too far ahead with investing in these AIs that all of these companies are offering separately, how do you navigate that? Like
Yeah. I think so a lot of these other AIs, like, that are coming out from these big companies that are coming out, right? They're behemoths, right? They take a lot of management. They're not finite in what they do. For instance, in the accounting one, right? That accounting knowledge that they needed to bring out, you can't train those other ones without bringing in huge GPU farms. And so we really are worried about that individual process, like what's hurting your business and what can we solve there, as opposed to let's bring in a whole AI that's going to try to take over. And there's companies that are absolutely succeeding in that, right? We're going to have it do our HR, we're going to do our customer service and all these other things where we really are focused on that one. So my time is up. I hear them. So I would love to talk after. And if you do want that, go back to that last slide. This little roadmap that helps out, just it's no magic, no secret or anything. It just helps you start thinking of ways that your business could start using AI. Send me an email, come get a business card, and I'd love to talk more.